South Africa is a visitor to Africa.
Okay.
Because in the history of Africa, we don't have South Africa.
Okay.
Zimbabwe is a visitor to Africa. Because in the history of the country, we don't have a Zimbabwe. Botswana is a visitor to Africa. Nigeria is a visitor to Africa. We're looking at the Berlin Conference as an infection that goes into the body of Africa. With this infection comes the Anglo-Saxon, the Francophones, the Luxembourgs, the Portuguese, the Italians, and the international community. When you're still trying to deal with the political issue, comes the religious, the Catholics, the Muslims, and the Christians. And while we are still trying to deal with that, comes the final straw that breaks the camel's back, where the people that are inside the system accept these divisions as their identity.
As legitimate.
And they begin to fight each other. If you don't find them fighting each other religiously, they're fighting each other politically, they're fighting each other nationally, they're fighting each other tribally. So I would not even want to start dealing and talking about Afrophobia and Xenophobia and sanitize colonialism in that state.
Okay.
The Africans are looking for sovereignty. And the South Africans have a right, as the Zimbabweans, as the Zambians, as the Nigerians, as the Ghanaians, that we ought to be respected. But the issues that we want to be respected amongst each other, but we don't seek the same respect from the powers that control all of us. So therefore it is a typical scenario where dogs are allowed to fight for bones while the table masters are eating the flesh.
Okay. Who is a foreigner in South Africa, in the South African context? What would you define, or who would you define as a foreigner? Is it a black person? Is it a white person? Who is a foreigner?
To be historically correct,
yes,
the African cannot be foreign on African soil because the borders themselves are foreign. So the first foreigner is the one who puts the borders. And again, we cannot be naive to assume that the migrations of the 17th and 1800s, which is the Mfekane Wars, and the last migration that we saw from Embo, which includes the Nguni people, and the Karangas could have been here much earlier, as early as the 9th, 7th, 6th, even before the ADs. But we need to understand one thing which is very, very important, that the Africans have been walking up and down this continent for more than 200,000 years. 200,000 years. So, who is a foreigner? The word foreigner is coming in as a modern term, which has immigration implications, which have been drafted on constitutionalism and Berlin Conference and the Roman Dutch law. But if you can look historically, if a child leaves the kitchen when he is in the dining room, he's a foreigner. When he goes to the toilet, he's a foreigner. When he's coming from the garden, he's now a foreigner. But we're still in the same homestead. So maybe initially, historically speaking, there is no foreigner who is in Africa if he is black and is organic. The first foreigners must start looking at are the Portuguese, are the Spanish, and the Dutch. Those are the people that are now coming outside from the continent to have occupants over the continent. The Chinese and the Phoenicians, Zimbabwe was doing trade with them. They were not foreigners, they were traders. They came to Beira, Lorenzo Marx.
Yes.
They bought what they wanted to buy and they went back. And that trade can be traced back into the Great Zimbabwe ruins. But immediately you see the Van Riebeck and the Cecil John Rhodes and the Jamersons and the Verwoerds, when they now come in and they say, no, we notice there are resources here. We are not going to be buying and going back home. We are now buying and staying here. It's a typical invasion of privacy, where a neighbor who has come to ask for salt now tells you to get off your bed. He's going to sleep on your bed. No, you must go and sleep in the back. No, he wants your wife. No, he wants the house. No, he wants the land. No, actually, you're not supposed to stay here. Go and stay somewhere else. This is the kind of foreign, because I want us to define foreign in the sense that when you are foreign, you don't know the people you're dealing with. You don't respect the people you're dealing with. You abuse the people that you're working with, and you usurp power and override and overtake. And as it were, you replace the indigenous people with yourselves. And how do you replace them? You replace them in their governance. You replace them on their land, on their trade, in business and transactions. You replace their education. You replace their spirituality. You replace basically everything. And you place yourself as the supreme over their governance. And to me, that is foreign. That is foreign that we can even begin to talk about South Africa as a democratic state, when in fact it is a foreign democratic state. The question is, how were South Africans governing themselves before the arrival of South Africa? It does not make sense to me that a Ngwenya in Zimbabwe is killed by a Mukwena in South Africa and is killed by a Mtimande in KwaZulu-Natal. And because is being killed, a Gushungo is being killed by Mukwena, because all these are crocodiles. That a Banda from Malawi and a Sibanda from Zimbabwe is being killed by Ngonyama in South Africa, by a Mtaung and a Tau in South Africa. And all these are lions. That a Mutsueneng in Lesotho and a Jambase in Xhosaland and Kabo in Botswana should find Shoko as an enemy when all of you are monkeys. Therefore, our totemic genesis as Africans will discover that we are all connected one to another. And our totemic inclinations towards each other supersedes our language, our boundaries, and our borders. Our totems are rivers, and they don't respect borders. They flow where they want. Therefore, you find that as far up north as Uganda and Kenya, the monkeys are there. As far up north as Nigeria, the Shumbas and the lions and the elephants and the crocodiles of Ghana are there. And my appeal, therefore, to Africans is that we need to move away from political conversation to a cultural, ancestral conversation. And I'm not saying this to try and make people comfortable or uncomfortable. That's none of my business. I'm here as a librarian, as an archive of history. And I need to be able to stand back and look at the political terrain and give it the reflection and put a mirror in front of ourselves and say, South Africans, are you sure that Ngobese, a Zuma, and a Kumalo in South Africa would take a spear and kill a Kumalo from Zimbabwe and say he's a foreigner? I find that totally, but at another level, I'll begin to argue again in the modern terms as to why must the movement of Zimbabweans from South Africa and the Nigerians and the Mozambicans become expedient to the delivery of the political scenario which South Africans want to develop for themselves. But ethnically speaking, there is no way. There is no way a Mabena of Zimbabwe is a foreigner to a Mabena in South Africa. There's no way a Masuku in Zimbabwe is a foreigner to a Masuku in Swaziland. It's not possible. Because one generation, they came here without passports. Another generation, passports are introduced. Now you must now get passports to go back. But what do you do? In Zimbabwe alone, we have more than 3.1 million immigrants from South Africa. But in South Africa right now, according to statistics, we're 400,000.
Why is it that people target immigrants?
Because they are afraid of the big spider, which is white monopoly capital, which is at the key, at the center of business and activity, where people feel that opportunities and privileges are not being made available. So they begin to fight amongst each other as to who receives the crumbs that are falling from the table. I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's embarrassing that Africans are fighting for jobs rather than fighting for ownership of industry.
Again,
we're fighting for jobs. We're fighting to be employed. We're not fighting to own
the means of production.
And even now, last time I checked the statistic that came out, about 150,000 jobs in South Africa have been lost because of the migration.
Have they not been created?
No,
for South Africans.
Remember the migrants, legal and the illegal. Some of them were running businesses. Therefore, when you chase away the leader of the business, Business collapse.
Okay, I hear you.
So actually, instead of you saying we're creating jobs, you're actually losing jobs.
Oh yeah.
And after losing jobs, the skills that are needed to run the jobs that you are fighting for. Checkers. South Africans want to ride bikes also and deliver. You can go all over the internet. You feel sorry for yourselves. They are not experienced. Some of them are driving into trucks. A few of them are in hospital as we speak right now. They're trying to drive those scooters. They drove into walls and etc. So skills development cannot be done by political expediency, speeches and slogans. The country needs to capacitate itself. My 2 cents worth is that South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, and Mozambique needed to take advantage of Zimbabwe in the sense that at the collapse of our economy and at the collapse of our manufacturing industry during the recession periods of ESAP, Economic Structural Adjustment Program, we had a lot of skilled, highly skilled, qualified, professional workforce that could no longer be employed on the ground. And you know what high-skilled people do? They go to the next green pastures. So instead of them looking at the collapse of Zimbabwe as an opportunity to absorb the skilled labor, to improve their economies, because they're coming from an apartheid, they're coming from repression kind of space. You need to have this, but skills transfer must be very important at that moment. That, okay, when you have one Zimbabwean here, how many people can you put around him so that he teaches, they learn, so that they grow together? Now, when you cut off the umbilical cord of skilled people who are driving the economy itself and giving you the skills that you need, I fear to say that only 2 things can happen. We're going to see a constant decline in the South African economy. Okay. That's number 1.
That's a prophecy.
2, we're going to begin to see the empowerment and the growth of white capital monopoly as they begin to import other people who are skilled from other places using the same legal, who using the same legal framework. As we already noticed right now, Cape Town in particular has lifted its arms to welcome the Israelis who are coming into the economy. So the question must be, what kind of Israelis are coming to the economy? Are these military people? Are these economy people? Are these agronomists and etc.? Romania, the Romanians, Eastern Bloc countries who also started making way into the country. And at the end of the day, I don't want to talk much about what are the white people who are coming into the country going to do. But I want to look it in the eye and ask the question, will the state of the common South African, black South African, be better after a fellow black person has left? Or the South African person is now going to be treated the same way the white man was treating the foreigner who was working for him? Will this be better or worse? Extraction business model, which says you move the resources of poor countries to a developed country, creates that problem fundamentally. Where Congo, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Botswana, Angola, Namibia, Lesotho, and Eswatini are basically raw material extracting zones. Because the biggest industry that can beneficiate these minerals is in South Africa. So what do? You come to Zambia, you lift up the copper, take it to South Africa, where you build the industries for employment. But here where you've taken out the mineral, you are training people to be engineers, to work in the processing plant, which is not here. So when the person graduates, what does he do? He follows his minerals. Where the industries are. Whether it is platinum, whether it is chrome, whether it is gold, and etc. So the place then that becomes the hub of industrialization
in South Africa.
If it does not match with the places where the mineral has been extracted, you can be sure that every truck that goes into South Africa carrying raw materials, there are 10 to 15 people behind it
who are following their minerals.
Then they are following their minerals to these countries. Whether it is grain, whether it is mineral, whether it is entertainment, whether it is what, but people will be where the industry is, because where now the manufacturing is happening, that's where music is, that's where parties are, that's where drinks are, that's where hotels are, that's where the life is. So, and until we begin to understand maybe the extraction mindset, and I'm thankful to Comrade Idi Mnangagwa, and I'm thankful for President Boko. I'm still going to find out what HH will do, where you begin to put embargoes, literally embargoes on minerals, and say no more raw lithium out of Zimbabwe.
We're processing it here.
Within weeks, me and you will go to Bigita one of these days. Within weeks of that embargo, you begin to see factories and manufacturing we're now going to manufacture our own batteries. Now look how many people are going to fit into those 5, 10, 15,000 people going to work in those industries. Now of the 18, 20, 42, 62 minerals that we're exporting out of the country right now, if the same embargo can go on all those minerals, the job creation becomes automatic. Burkina Faso, Traore wakes up in the morning and he makes a very small decision. But look at the impact. No more, there's no raw tomato that will leave Burkina Faso. Small. It might sound like, so what? What is it? But you understand that he has actually created a market for tomato sauce manufacturing, dried tomatoes manufacturing, and etc. And the amount of jobs that have been created only from tomato.
We are now talking about value addition in independent states.
That's where job creation happens. And I think that's one of the biggest solutions to immigration issue. It's job. People looking for greener pastures. So how do you create greener pastures where you are? You begin to water your raw materials. You water your ground through, and this needs political will to achieve those kind of boundaries where you can say no more to this. And when you say no more to this, the international community will squeak and scream and cry, sometimes even put you on sanctions, like they did to Niger and Mali, where you say no more uranium goes out. If France wants to make electricity, they must come and build the plant here, and they will put a cable from here to France. And when France misbehaves, we can also switch off the plug. And which European country wants to be managed like that? So that created almost the sanctions and all the chaos that we are seeing in the Sahel, where Europe is beginning to say, no, you cannot hold us ransom. But no, if you don't want us to hold you ransom, then you also don't hold us ransom to our own resources. Because where the resources are, France has been extracting from more than 15, 16 countries. Now they're complaining that France is overpopulated with blacks. But the question is, when you're taking on raw materials, where did you think we are going? And where the resources are, that's where the people will be.
Would you say that apartheid ended in South Africa? Or it is still alive even up to this day?
Ideologies don't die easily. Especially when people are benefiting from those ideologies. Apartheid as a system, it collapsed. But as a business, it is still thriving. Because when you look at apartheid, you want to ask yourself the question, what kind of religion was being practiced during apartheid? Then you find that it was the NKK Church, the Roman Dutch Reformed Church. Those churches are still standing. And members are still sitting on the same benches where they were sitting during apartheid. You want to ask yourself the question, what was the financial system? What was the model of the financial system? Of course, they collapsed the Volkswagen Bank, they collapsed the Sambo banks, and they formed Absa Bank. Still same bank, being an apartheid legacy bank. Then you ask yourself, what kind of education was being taught during apartheid? It was the same when Van Riebeeck arrived, and when the Africans did what? The same curriculum is still running. You want to ask yourself the question with the ID issue, the Dom Pass. And you cannot enter here unless your passport is stamped and etc. Are we now not talking immigration issues based on a passport and an ID? So when you say apartheid, has it died? I think ideologically speaking, it looked like the system collapsed. But practically speaking,
or we'll simply say that the leaders were changed and replaced by black Africans.
Now imagine the pain when a fellow black person goes to fight against a system. Maybe now maybe what I said on the other show starts making sense to you. When I said when we were oppressed, our brothers went out of the country to go and fight and mobilize and organize to come and fight this system. But when they came back, They found the offices clean.
Mm-hmm.
And they chased away all the white people. And when they sat in those chairs, they became ministers of health. Let's continue. There's a story that I always laugh about. There's a story I always laugh about.
Yeah.
These guys are coming from Tare,
Uh-huh.
coming into Harare
Uh-huh.
during the days of Matsanga.
Mm-hmm.
And this other man comes into the bus,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a gun. He pulls out the gun into the air. There's Munwese, Zhukwama, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
A wallet.
Wallet. Uh-huh.
And he has a big bag. And he's collecting wallets from everybody, putting them into the bag.
Mm-hmm.
This other guy is watching very carefully and says, hey, I can handle this guy.
He's called Vamazendek.
I can handle this guy.
Uh-huh.
And just at the flick of time,
Uh-huh.
picks up the guy, pins him down, pulls the gun, stamps him on the chest,
Yeah.
clogs him, and the whole bus goes, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Takes up the gun into the air.
Yeah.
Says, Ngoma ndio ndio.
Woman
We continue. That is Zhukwama.
Wallets in the bag.
So the whole concept of apartheid, for me, even with the arrival of our heroes, Ngoma ndio ndio. The Minister of Mines,
The struggle
black man
continues.
is not allowed to carry diamond in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to be seen carrying gold. You're not allowed to be going there and coming there. You must get this stamped here.
Mm-hmm.
Your herbs can't be used. So apartheid is alive
Just continue.
and well.